They announced it between dessert and coffee, just like that. "We've decided to pass down the cabin," my mom said, raising her glass, "to Elaine. It's only right." And in that moment, while everyone smiled and nodded, I stood up, calmly, and said, "Then maybe it's time we talk about the $1.2 million I've paid to keep this family afloat. Hi, I'm Jenna." And no, I didn't say it to cause a scene. I said it because sometimes silence is more dangerous than truth. What happened next? Let's just say the cranberry sauce wasn't the only thing congealing at the table. Before we jump into the story, if you don't mind, let me know where you're from by leaving a comment below. That way, I can send a special hello your way. Now go ahead, grab yourself a warm cup of water and find a comfy spot. It's time to begin the story. I wasn't planning to go back, but the envelope showed up anyway, tucked between a water bill and a coupon flyer, creamy, gold-trimmed, like it still had something to prove. It had Mom's handwriting, the neat, slightly slanted cursive that used to label every lunchbox and birthday card. On the back, just under the flap, a faint stain shaped like a coffee ring smudged the N in my name. Not that it mattered. She'd spelled it wrong anyway. Gina. Inside was a printed invite with embossed gold leaves and a menu tucked behind it. The paper smelled faintly of cinnamon and something floral. My stomach tightened as I read through the list. Maple glazed turkey, cornbread dressing, cranberry chutney, and Elaine sweet potato casserole. I blinked at that one. The recipe was mine, adapted after college from something I saw on a cooking blog. For 5 years, I'd made it every Thanksgiving. I even hand-whipped the topping once, back when I still believed that if I gave enough, I'd be enough. Now it was under her name. Of course it was. I left the invitation on the counter and poured myself coffee I didn't want, the kind of cup you brew just to have something to do with your hands. The morning light slanted through my kitchen blinds, catching on a chipped mug from a company holiday party 3 jobs ago. It was quiet, peaceful, a silence I had earned. Later that night, I pushed the envelope across the table at Mel's place. We sat on her floor, eating green curry out of takeout boxes, feet tucked beneath throw blankets she kept year-round. "They spelled your name wrong," she said between bites, raising an eyebrow. "That's new." I gave a half smile. "Or consistent." Mel tilted her head. "You going?" "I don't know. I haven't seen them since the refinance. That brunch was awful," she finished. "And you didn't deserve it." I nodded. The air smelled like lemongrass and rice, familiar and grounding. I keep thinking maybe I should just let it go. "There's a difference between peace and silence," Mel said gently. "Your family prefers the second one." I looked down at the plastic fork in my hand. The prongs were bent slightly. "They'll pretend everything's fine." "Then maybe this year you stop pretending." The drive to Asheville took under 3 hours, but I stopped twice. Once for gas, once for no reason at all, just pulled into a rest area and stared at vending machines through my windshield. The leaves had started to turn along the highway, rust and gold spreading across the hills like someone had painted fire over the ridges. About 20 miles outside the city, I passed the exit to the cabin. My grip on the steering wheel tightened. The same exit I'd taken the week Dad's back taxes were due. I didn't slow down this time, just breathed. In and out, like Mel taught me. Funny how some roads don't haunt you. They just wait. When I pulled up to the house, technically still the family home, I noticed the yard had been recently landscaped. The hedges were trimmed, mums arranged by the porch. A white sandwich board with hand-lettered cursive stood near the walkway. "Welcome, Walker family," it said, with flourishes and gold ribbon. There were 12 names listed underneath. Mine wasn't one of them. I adjusted the sleeve of my jacket and walked up the steps. The door opened before I knocked. "Hi there," a man said, smiling like he didn't recognize me at all. "Are you one of the neighbors?" It took a beat to realize this was Elaine's fiancé. He'd seen photos of me, at least a dozen. I'd mailed them the gift for their engagement, a cookbook, ironically. "I'm here for dinner," I said, my tone light. He blinked, then smiled awkwardly. "Right, of course." Inside, the house smelled like cinnamon and polished wood, just like it always had, like holidays and expectations and things that never quite fit. I stood in the entryway, the hum of conversation floating from the dining room. The floor creaked under my shoes. That's when I saw the photo wall. 8 framed collages lined the hallway. Thanksgiving through the years. 2015, Elaine at the head of the table, holding a carving knife. 2016, Mom ladling gravy, Dad laughing. 2017, cousins on the porch, cocoa in hand. 2019 was missing. That year, I'd wired them $42,000 to save the cabin. Apparently no one remembered. Or maybe they did, and left it out on purpose. Some moments don't break you all at once. They unfold in quiet waves, slowly replacing air with something heavier. I stood there, my fingers brushing the edge of a dusty frame, pretending to admire it like any guest would. Funny how it still surprised me. I turned toward the dining room, smile steady, stomach hollow. I was ready to be erased again. But this time, I'd be paying attention. The dining room glowed in candlelight, but the only warmth was reserved for Elaine. It was the kind of glow you find in lifestyle magazines, soft lighting bouncing off polished silver, linen napkins folded into fans, wine glasses catching gold tones from overhead pendants. Every place setting had a place card, scripted, curved, precise, except one, mine. J. Guest was scrawled in blocky ink on the back of an old wedding RSVP card. It was placed at the far end of the table, where the corner curved awkwardly toward the kitchen pass-through window. Behind me sat a stack of folded napkins and the backup wine opener. If I leaned back too far, I'd knock into the tray of bottled water. I stood there for a moment, glancing down the table. Elaine's seat was in the middle, flanked by Noah and Mom. Her name card was embossed. Her plate had a decorative charger underneath. She even had her own butter knife. Mine was missing. Corinne caught my eye and smiled from across the room. "Dinner's almost ready," she called. "Go ahead and find your seat." "I think I found it," I murmured. The air smelled like rosemary and brown sugar. It should have felt familiar. Instead, it felt like a museum exhibit. Everything had been arranged with the kind of care that speaks volumes. Every detail chosen, every omission intentional. Elaine glided in, wearing a burgundy wrap dress, her hair curled in deliberate waves. "Happy Thanksgiving, everyone," she sang out, raising a glass of something sparkling. "I just want to say how grateful I am that we're all here together. Healthy, happy, whole." Aunt Linda sniffled. Someone clapped. "I especially want to thank my amazing parents," Elaine continued, her voice rich with affection, "for always believing in me and for preserving the family legacy. I'm beyond excited to carry it forward." She looked toward Noah, who smiled and squeezed her hand. "And, well," she added coyly, "we'll share more in a bit. But just know, this place, this home, it's part of our next chapter." Cheers erupted. My roll deflated slightly under my grip. A server, probably one of the cousins playing helper, set down a casserole dish in front of me. I blinked. My recipe. Same toasted pecan topping, same ceramic baking dish I'd used for years. But the little chalkboard label next to it read, "Elaine's Sweet Potato Casserole." I didn't say anything. Dad leaned toward Uncle James, who was working through his second pour of red wine. "Jenna always had her own path," he said, chuckling. "Somewhere far away." Uncle James smirked. "Well, she came back. That's something." No one laughed. No one corrected him either. I shifted in my chair and reached for the wine. The corkscrew was still sticky from earlier. I wiped it on my napkin, the one already stained with something sweet and amber. Years ago, I'd brought a cranberry orange compote to this table. I'd followed a Bon Appetit recipe, added orange zest, and chilled it overnight. When I served it, Mom had said, "Let's just stick to tradition, sweetie." She dumped it in the trash after dinner. That memory returned now, sharp and clean. Corinne tapped her glass. "Everyone," she said warmly, "we have a little announcement." We wanted to wait until dessert, but why not now? I felt my back straighten, uninvited. She turned to Elaine. "Your father and I have decided it's time to pass down the cabin. We've talked, we've prayed, and we feel strongly that it should go to someone who will truly value it. Someone who stayed close. Someone who understands what it means." Elaine's smile could have lit the room. "We're giving the cabin to Elaine," Corinne said, lifting her glass. "Couldn't go to a better person," Russell added. Applause scattered like confetti. I didn't move. My fork hovered above my plate. The sweet potatoes had cooled. The sugar on top hardened into a crust. My fingers curled tight around the handle. The arithmetic began in my head before I could stop it. 2016, $18,000 for Dad's emergency dental surgery. Uninsured. 2018, $42,000 to pay back taxes on the cabin. 2020, $9,700 for Mom's rehab stay after the fall. 2021, $15,000 to cover the plumbing repair after the pipe burst in winter. 2022, $5,200 for Noah and Elaine's engagement party. Because Mom's card accidentally maxed out, I chewed slowly. The bite tasted like roasted sugar and something bitter underneath. My jaw clenched, not from anger, yet, but from the familiar strain of swallowing things that should be spoken. I looked across the table at Elaine. She was already talking to a cousin, animated, laughing, the kind of laugh that forgets who else is in the room. I said nothing, but something inside me started to rise. Quiet at first, then sharper, weightier, a voice I hadn't heard in a while. Not yet, I thought. Not here. But soon. Very soon. I didn't come here to make a scene, but I didn't come here to vanish either. The dining room had thinned out. Dessert plates clinked. Pie crumbs lingered beside melting scoops of vanilla ice cream. Someone had switched the playlist to soft jazz, something with a saxophone that made the air feel heavier. The fireplace crackled like it was trying to break the silence nobody acknowledged. I sat with my hands folded in my lap. My napkin lay untouched beside the dessert fork. Across the table, Elaine was mid-laugh, recounting a story about Noah's dog getting into a tray of holiday cookies. Russell leaned back with his arms crossed, his plate already clean. Corinne was refilling wine glasses without asking. Her hand brushed past my glass without pausing. I glanced down at the manila folder beside my plate. Simple, thin, weighty. The voices blurred together. Cousins murmured about Black Friday sales, a new show they were watching, recipes traded across the table like currency. I let them speak. I waited. And then, when the conversation hit its softest lull, when the only thing moving was a spoon circling whipped cream, I stood. My chair barely made a sound. "I'll just say this quickly," I began. My voice wasn't loud, but it landed like a dropped plate. Since we're all celebrating family tonight, I figured we might remember what it's cost to keep one together. Elaine turned her head first, smile half frozen. Mom set the wine bottle down a little too fast. Russell didn't move. I opened the folder. Inside were 6 documents. The first, an email from Corinne dated February 3rd, 2021. Subject, "Thank you again." It ended with, "You saved us again. We'll pay it back. Promise." The second was a scanned image of a $42,000 bank transfer I'd made in 2018 to stop the cabin from being listed in a foreclosure auction. The third, a photo of the cabin's original tax statement with my name handwritten across the check memo line. The fourth, a typed agreement to cover Dad's legal fees when he got sued after that botched work contract, signed by both of us. The fifth, a copy of the emailed receipt for Elaine's engagement party venue deposit from my account. The sixth was a sticky note, yellowed, folded 3 times. On it, in blue pen, were just 4 words. "I owe you $30,000. Love, Mom." I laid them out one by one, like cards on a table. "The total," I said quietly, "since 2016 is just over $1.2 million. No one spoke. I looked toward Russell. If we're handing out family property, it seems fair to acknowledge who kept it afloat. Corinne's hand hovered over her wine glass, then pulled back. You kept records? She said after a beat, almost too soft. I kept receipts, I replied. Elaine let out a sharp exhale through her nose. You make it sound like you bought your way into the family. No, I said. I make it sound like I paid the invoices while everyone else passed the pie. Aunt Linda gasped. Not loud, but sharp, audible. Noah blinked at his plate. A cousin shifted in their chair, looking down. Russell turned to look at the fire like it had said something meaningful. The jazz track skipped, then restarted. This isn't the place, Corinne tried. This is exactly the place, I said, gesturing gently to the heirloom china and polished centerpiece. Because this is where the forgetting happens, right here, between the mashed potatoes and the polite applause. From the corner of the room, a younger cousin whispered, Wait, she paid for the cabin taxes, but was quickly hushed by her mother. I folded the documents back into the folder, slowly, neatly. My hands didn't shake. I didn't cry. That was the thing. They always expected tears or fury, but sometimes dignity is the quietest kind of resistance. I'm not asking for applause, I added, just memory. I let the words settle. Not because I needed them to hit, but because they deserved space. There's a kind of silence that speaks louder than 100 voices, the kind that swells because no one has the courage or decency to fill it. I picked up my napkin, gently brushed it across the printed dinner menu, our legacy dinner, and watched the ink smear into a blur of navy blue and cranberry red. Then I turned and walked toward the front of the house, each step soft against the runner rug. I could feel eyes on my back, but no footsteps followed. The door creaked as I pushed it open. The night was cold, not bitter, but honest. A wind brushed past my collar like a warning or a blessing. I couldn't tell which. I stepped onto the porch and breathed. The kind of breath you take when something heavy finally moves, even if it's just inside your chest. Somewhere behind me, the fire popped. Someone coughed, but no one followed. There's a truth I've learned quietly over the years. Being needed isn't the same as being valued. And for the first time in a long time, I felt the difference in my bones. After you drop a truth like that, you don't expect hugs, but you don't expect dead air either. The porch lights hummed overhead, strung in soft loops along the railing, warm white bulbs against the November dark, like tiny stars trying to stay out of the cold. I stood there for a while, arms folded, letting the night wrap around me. Inside, the noise had died down. No one rushed after me, not even to argue. The door creaked open. Corinne stepped out, clutching a mug of tea she hadn't touched. She closed the door behind her with deliberate softness, like she didn't want anyone to hear her being civil. You embarrassed us, she said, not looking at me. I didn't answer right away. I just thought, she went on, if you had something to say, it could have been said privately. Funny, I said. That's what I thought for 7 years, and yet here we are. She exhaled through her nose, the way she always did when she didn't want to fight but still wanted to wound. You always had a way of making things about you, Jenna. I turned to face her. I didn't make anything up. I just stopped hiding it. The porch light caught on the rim of her glasses. You know what families do when things get hard? I didn't answer. I knew the script. They survive by avoiding what hurts, she said. I gave a small laugh, dry and short. Yeah, you said that to me when I was 17 and asked why you didn't come to my graduation. She flinched, just barely. It was complicated back then. It's always complicated when you don't want to show up. The door creaked again. Elaine this time. She wrapped a shawl around herself like she was heading into battle. You didn't have to humiliate us, she snapped. I didn't humiliate you, I said. I reminded you. Elaine shook her head, stepping down one stair. You've always felt above us, like you were keeping score while the rest of us were just trying to live. I wasn't keeping score, I said. I was keeping the lights on. That shut her up for a second. Then she scoffed. "Well, congratulations." I didn't move. "We're a family," Corinne said finally. "You should have talked to us." I stared out toward the driveway, gravel catching moonlight. "I did. You just didn't listen." Elaine turned and went inside without another word. Corinne lingered for a few seconds longer. Then she followed. They didn't say goodnight. I walked to my car, my footsteps crunching soft against the drive. The engine groaned as it turned over, then settled into a low hum. I pulled out slowly, headlights sweeping across the porch. No one watched me leave. The highway stretched ahead like an unspooled ribbon. I kept the radio low, just enough to break the silence. Some soft piano piece drifted through, something instrumental, gentle, unfamiliar. I drove with one hand on the wheel, the other resting on my thigh. At a red light near the city limit, I opened my phone. There it was, a text thread from 2020. Corinne. "Thanks again, sweetie. We'll fix this." I stared at it. The words looked smaller than I remembered. I scrolled back through the thread. Dozens of requests, grateful emojis, late-night apologies. Then silence. I hovered over the trash icon. Deleted. The light turned green. When I was a kid, I thought forgiveness meant pretending nothing happened. Now I understand it means remembering and choosing peace anyway. By the time I got back to Charlotte, it was almost 1 a.m. My apartment was still, quiet, a different kind of silence. Earned, not inflicted. I dropped my overnight bag by the door and kicked off my shoes. The air inside smelled faintly of lavender and lemon cleaner. I unpacked slowly, tossing toiletries into the bathroom bin, rolling up socks. My blouse still smelled like sage and roasted turkey. I didn't hesitate. I tossed it into the laundry without looking. I sat on the edge of the bed and opened my laptop. A new email sat at the top of my inbox. Subject: Change in access. From russell.walker@email.com. Message: Your access to the shared family account has been revoked. Please contact Corinne for further discussion. That was it. No greeting, no context, just silence. Delivered digitally. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Not shocked, not even angry. Just done. My phone buzzed. "Mel? You okay?" I typed slowly. "Yeah, I think I finally am." I left the message hanging and turned back to my laptop. I created a new folder on my desktop. I named it exactly what it was: receipts. Then I exhaled. A real one. Not shallow. Not tight. Some endings don't come with explosions. They arrive like the sound of a lock clicking shut. And sometimes that's enough. There's a strange clarity in building a case against the people who taught you to be kind. January brought gray skies and long mornings. I sat at my kitchen table watching rain tap against the window, slow and deliberate. It was the kind of morning that made you want to stay in bed. But I had work to do. My laptop was open, folders scattered on the desktop, PDFs of wire transfers, email threads, voicemail backups, bank statements. The folder named Receipts had doubled in size since Thanksgiving. I hadn't just been saving files. I'd been rewriting memory, replacing vague apologies with hard data. Sometimes grief wears the face of math. I opened a voice memo I'd almost forgotten I had. The file was dated May 2019, right after I drained my 401k to cover their second mortgage. Mom's voice crackled through my earbuds, tired, tearful. "You didn't have to do that," she said, "but you always show up. I swear, Jenna, it'll all come back to you. We'll fix it." I hit pause. My mouse hovered over the delete icon, then slid away. Mel called that morning just as I finished organizing the last folder. "Still on for your lawyer thing?" she asked. "Still on." "You need a ride?" "Number, but maybe coffee afterward." "You got it." Downtown Charlotte was damp and quiet, the kind of weekday where everyone moved a little slower. I parked 2 blocks from the law office and walked under an umbrella, the hem of my jeans absorbing the sidewalk puddles. Devin Chott's office was tucked between a wine bar and a law bookstore. His receptionist offered me water. I declined, but thanked her. Devin was sharp. Pressed shirt, no tie, framed diplomas lined precisely on his wall. He greeted me with a calm handshake and waved me to the leather chair across from his desk. "You came prepared," he said, glancing at the printed index I'd included. "Old habit," I replied. He started scanning the documents, lips moving silently as he read. The room was so quiet I could hear the soft tick of his wall clock. After 10 minutes, he looked up. "Informal debt, yes, but consistent and provable. The notes, transfers, and history of reliance all suggest an implied obligation. You've got leverage." "I'm not looking to sue them," I said. "I'm not after money." "What are you after?" "Clarity and boundaries. I want a legal hold that prevents them from selling the cabin without my approval." He nodded, clicking through a few more files. "There's no recorded co-ownership under your name, at least not officially. But if we can show financial interest over time, we can argue for equitable stake. Not guaranteed, but strong." I leaned back in the chair. The rain hadn't let up. They're already rewriting history. "That's what people do when they get caught," he said. "They retreat into silence or fabrication, sometimes both." Devin's assistant poked her head in. "Email from Red Elm Realty just came through. Listing request on the Walker cabin went live this morning. No cosigner." He turned his monitor so I could see. There it was. 3 photos of the property, a glowing description, and a "coming soon" banner. "They did it," I said, voice flat. "They know you have legal interest," Devin replied. "They're just hoping you'll be too tired to fight." I closed the folder. "They've miscalculated." He slid a notepad toward me. "Let's draft your intent letter and a property interest claim. We'll send it registered mail first, then follow up with a temporary legal hold." We worked through the afternoon. By the time I left, the rain had stopped, but the street still shone wet under the fading light. The air smelled of damp pavement and early spring, though it was weeks away. I didn't go home right away. Instead, I found a quiet cafe 2 blocks down. Warm lights, brick walls, the scent of espresso and toasted cinnamon. I sat by the window, ordered a single shot, and opened my laptop again. I typed slowly. "To whom it may concern," I began. "This letter serves as notice of financial interest in the property known as..." It wasn't long, just firm, factual. No bitterness, no plea, just position. At the bottom, I added a single line. "Any attempts to alter ownership or list the property without resolution will be considered a breach of interest." I saved the file to my hard drive, then again to an encrypted folder. I labeled it "Last Option." Before I left, I sat back and watched the street outside. A man walked his dog in a yellow raincoat. A woman carried tulips in a paper sleeve. No one knew what I'd just done, and no one needed to. Some revolutions don't come with fire. They come with paper, with names printed in black ink and the quiet steadiness of someone who has had enough. There's a quiet kind of power in standing up, not to fight, but to hold the line. I tucked my laptop into my bag and stepped back into the cool air, calm in a way I hadn't felt in years. This wasn't war. This was reclamation. I went back to the cabin not to reclaim it, but to reclaim myself inside it. The sky over the Blue Ridge was the color of wet slate. Bare branches clawed gently at the wind. Flurries danced along the curve of the mountain as I parked at the base of the gravel drive. The gate was open. No one had been here for days. The cabin looked smaller than I remembered. Half the shutters hung crooked. One window was boarded, not broken, but bracing. I stepped up to the porch slowly, my boots crunching over old pine needles and a dusting of snow. The railing was still there, worn, softened by time and weather. I ran my hand along the top plank and found it. Just faintly, just enough. J+E, scratched in clumsy lines. We were 8. We'd stolen Dad's screwdriver and carved our initials between chores. I'd half expected it to be sanded away, but it was there. And somehow, so was I. Inside, the house smelled like old wood and something faintly metallic, like cold air soaked into the walls. Boxes were stacked in the foyer, some labeled, most not. A realtor's flyer was stuck to the fridge with a magnet shaped like a peach. In the living room, only one chair remained, a frayed recliner facing the window. It had been Russell's favorite. I used to think it was the throne of the house. Now it just looked like a relic no one bothered to move. I walked through room by room. The kitchen counters were bare. The fireplace still had soot from its last use. In the hall closet, tucked behind a broken umbrella, I found a cookie tin. Round, dented, faded red. Inside envelopes. Dozens. Some addressed to Dad from his brother. Some bills. And one, creased and childlike, labeled Jenna. Age 11. I opened it slowly. It was a birthday card. One of those singing ones that no longer played, but Mom had signed it in blue ink with hearts over the eyes. "Keep dreaming, Jellybean," it read. I let my fingers rest on that line a little longer than I meant to. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was softness. In the attic, the air felt thinner. Dust floated in sunbeams like slow-moving snow. I found a cardboard box that hadn't been taped shut. Inside, a sketchbook. Green cover, spiral binding, edges curled. On the inside cover, Jenna's dreams. The handwriting was unmistakably hers. I sat down on the floor, knees pulled to my chest. The sketches inside were uneven, unfinished. Castles, tree houses, one of a rocket ship labeled somewhere else. I didn't cry. I didn't even smile. I just breathed, slow and present, letting the stillness answer for everything that never had. Downstairs, the front door clicked open. "Miss Walker," the realtor called gently, "just checking in." "I'm coming," I said, voice even. I slipped a note into the sketchbook before closing it. History isn't inheritance. Debt isn't legacy. The final walkthrough was short. The transaction was clean, quiet. Devin had done the prep. Proceeds split. Half to me, half directly to the Carolina housing shelter. No need for applause, just closure. The kind you don't frame, but still remember. Back in Charlotte, the apartment felt smaller, but warmer. I unpacked slowly, again. The sketchbook cover and a pinewood keychain shaped like a house sat on my desk. The keychain read, "Home." I placed both in a frame, not because it mattered to them, because it mattered to me. A few days later, an envelope arrived. No return address, but I recognized the loop of the lowercase g Elaine. Inside, a single note. No greeting, no signature. "I'm pregnant. Don't worry, I won't ask for anything." I folded it once and slid it into a drawer. Not because I planned to respond, just because some messages are easier to hold than throw away. That afternoon, I made tea and stood by the window. Across the street, 2 neighborhood kids knelt on the sidewalk, drawing with chalk. Big, wobbly flowers, a sun with crooked rays, a heart split in two, then reconnected with a rainbow. I smiled, not for them, for me. There's peace in knowing you don't need an audience to heal, only quiet, only truth, and time. Standing by that window, tea in hand, watching a child draw a rainbow where a crack once split the sidewalk, I realized healing doesn't always come from others. Sometimes it begins the moment we choose ourselves. Families can shape us, shelter us, or break us. But legacy isn't what they leave behind. It's what we decide to carry forward. In life, peace doesn't come from pretending the past didn't hurt. It comes from learning to live without apology for who you became because of it. If this story reminded you of a time you had to draw a line with grace or grit, I'd love to hear your story. And if you're still walking through that silence, know this: you're not alone. Sometimes closure isn't about endings, but about the strength to begin again.